Hi, and thank you for joining us today on the Road to Recovery. I'm your host, Rhonda Jackson, serial entrepreneur and small business advocate. And joining us today is attorney Christopher Darden. Thank you for joining us today, Christopher.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's a law group. And he is the candidate in seat 130 for the LA County Superior Court. So we've got us a double guest here. So your presence not only represents, your career accomplishments, but the future and legacy here in Los Angeles. So thank you for your leadership and your support.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to come spend some time with you today.
Oh, very, very welcome. So for those in the audience that aren't as familiar with you and your body of work as I am, would you please introduce yourself?
Well, I am a Los Angeles attorney, a criminal law attorney. Some people remember me as a prosecutor in the O.J. Simpson case, but my experience is much more broad than that. I am in my 44th year practicing as a criminal law attorney. I was in the DA's office in LA for 16 years. I left in 1997. I became a full-time law professor at Southwestern University School of Law. I opened my own practice, my own firm, back in 1997. And I've been practicing as a sole practitioner, a criminal law defense attorney, and civil rights attorney ever since. And I also teach.
Okay.
I teach at Santa Monica Community College. I teach criminal law and crime scene investigation, and I've been doing that for over 6 years.
Okay. Wow. What? Oh my goodness. Just do.
But I just do.
Okay, that's fine. Well, one of the ways I like to start the show is I like to ask the guests for one word that they would use to describe now. What would your one word be?
Settled.
Okay, say a little more.
I am very content with where I am in life. I am happy. I am
Okay.
happy. And I'm happy with the choices that I've made. And I'm happy with the place I'm in. And, and I just have this sense of calmness and confidence that I didn't always have. I'm in a great place right now.
That is beautiful, especially considering how busy you are that you can, but that, you know what that spirit speaks to? That speaks to your giving heart, right? The fact that you can, make make plans and help adjust perspectives for the future, and the students that you teach and the cases that you defend, you're changing lives every day you step out the door. So that is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks.
you.
So I, for my own interests, as well as majority of our entrepreneurial audience, emerging and established, and maybe even some startups that might be listening in, I want to have a conversation with you about the relevance of the legal insights, right? The information that we need to be informed on as entrepreneurs. So if you'll allow me to, I guess let's set a little bit of legal foundation. Like what areas, if you had to pick two or three, are the most primary, most basic that every entrepreneur should just have on their radar?
Well, I think number one, you have to make a decision about the type of business you're going into, and not in the business per se, but in terms of the legal entity that
Okay.
you want or intend to be. And we don't have to get into that in great detail, I don't think, but whether or not you're going to be a 501c, which of course is a nonprofit, or whether you're going to be a for-profit business, an LLC, or whatever. But I think number one, you have to decide what your legal status is going to be.
Okay. And then what would be your second? So I'm status, majority, I would say if I surveyed majority of our audience, we were either LLCs or S Corps, a few nonprofits here and there. So just setting that tone for the relevance of the rest of the conversation. What would you say are about like contracts and intellectual property, especially with a lot of us having digital and service oriented products?
Well, in terms of contracts, I think that it is important, if you can, to have uniform contracts drafted by lawyers, or if not, approved by lawyers. And I think that in these contracts, you have to try and cover or make allowance for almost every conceivable disaster
Okay, so I have to have
that might occur.
25-page contract to pick colors for one room? I'm just clarifying.
Well, it shouldn't take 25-page contract to pick colors for one room. But you know, there are things that you want to cover, and one of the things you want to cover is what happens if they decide they don't like the color the next day.
Mhm.
Whose responsibility is it, and who covers the cost of freshening up that color or changing that color if your customers aren't satisfied, for instance? Shouldn't take 25 pages, but it ought to be covered.
Okay, no, that's good to know. Actually, that's really good to know. I'm gonna put that one in my little basket. And then intellectual property. We hear a lot about people stealing ideas. I know in the music industry, there's all the sampling that happens. What's the best route of consideration for protecting your intellectual property, or the secret sauce of what you do, right? Because a lot of us have businesses that are already in existence, right? I'm a tire shop, I'm an interior designer, here's a paint store, here's a plumber or an electrician. But how do we protect the part that makes us unique?
Well, you know what? One of the things that I see all the time, and I'm guilty of it myself, is um, we create data and information and images uh, in support of our businesses all the time, and we put them on the internet.
Mhm.
And I rarely see anyone copyright the images, the photographs, the advertisement, the drawings, the I rarely ever see anyone copyright that material. And when you don't copyright it and you put it on the internet, it belongs to the universe. And you have to be careful that someone else doesn't copyright.
Mhm.
If you look me up, you will see hundreds of pictures of me on the internet. And you will see that someone has attached a copyright to photographs of me, uh, photographs I may or may not have taken,
Mhm.
copyrights placed without my consent or knowledge, without anyone asking me. And when we put this information on the internet or out into the public, we lose ownership and we lose the ability to profit. And you could actually be put in a position where um, you might be prevented from further using the material that you created to support and enhance your own business.
I can't even imagine not being able to use a picture of myself because someone else copyrighted a picture of my face. That's
Yeah.
okay. When you
Yeah.
put it like that. Okay, so I think one of the considerations, and this may be a little premature in our conversation, is the cost and expense of doing that, right? Like, we've got payroll, we've got all the insurances, we've got, and then some of the marketing, I'll use that as an example, that we're creating is just to drum up revenues to be able to, fulfill a service or, sell our wares of sorts. So now to take out funds from that to protect what is creating it, it seems like a bucket with a hole in it almost.
Well, owning a business and running a business is a bucket with a hole in it. The question is, how big is the hole? And, and yeah, you have to expend money on the legal issues to make sure that you protect your interest. I mean, let's say you create an image that just takes off, goes viral,
Mhm.
like a smiley face. Once upon a time, somebody created a yellow smiley face, and it was everywhere and all over the world. Just imagine if you had done that and did not copyright it. And the next thing you know, it's in movies, it's in Forrest Gump, it's on T-shirts all over the universe, and you're thinking, wow, I could have made $1 billion on that photograph or on that painting or picture. You just never know. You just never know what the value is or might be. Uh, of the things that you create. I have a piece of art right here behind me. A piece of art. It's an original piece of art that's important to me,
Mhm.
and I'm blurring it because I
I
don't want you to see it.
I know. I already asked, and you told me no. I get it. I get it. That's all right. That's okay. I wanted to know if there's an example, right, of maybe you as a fellow business owner, essentially, right, in your own private practice, of where your strategies for yourself maybe differed from your strategies and opinion as a business owner. Is there ever a situation where those two maybe don't line up?
Well, that's an interesting question. For me as a lawyer, because as a lawyer, um, I'm bound by two different masters. I have two different masters. One, of course, is the state bar and the rule of ethics that apply to lawyers and how we practice and what we can and cannot do. And then, of course, there's me, the individual, the human side of me that wants to, that wants to go out and answer, spontaneously legal questions that people
Yeah.
put to me, or say what I really think about a case that might be important to the community, or about a particular lawyer or a judge. And um, so, there are always conflicts, and in my life, and as a lawyer, I'm always trying to walk a fine line between what is permissible and what is impermissible.
Mhm, mhm. So and I'm paraphrasing, and you please correct this statement. So my grandmother used to say this all the time, that everybody doesn't have common sense. Do you find that you can pull more from common sense, and that those ethics and all those things just, like to me, our first law book was the Bible, right? That was universal. Everybody accepted it. Everybody said, yep, this is how we're going to do things. So do you find that you can find enough common ground just in, individual connection? Because, you deal with a lot of family type issues, right? The person that's represented there is usually supported by a lot of other people. So do you find enough common ground just in basic common human interest when you're making those type of decisions?
Well, generally, yes. I mean, you mentioned the Bible as being the first legal text in a sense, because the laws that are enacted are based on our collective moral values. And one of the places that we find to locate the foundation for our national and community values is in the Bible. And those values are reflected in the penal code. We as a community have decided what the standard of conduct or behavior ought to be, what should be permitted, and what shouldn't be permitted. And the same thing applies to the rules of ethics. You study the Bible, you become a Christian, and you try to live as a Christian. You study the rules of ethics as a lawyer. You try to be ethical and practice as an ethical lawyer. So, both these things provide a framework uh, for conduct. And generally, if my conduct is rooted, well rooted in the Bible, because I'm a Christian man,
Yeah,
then the rules of ethics, because I'm an ethical lawyer, I can generally merge the two and come up with the right approach and make the right decision.
I understand. So in a big city like Los Angeles, right, we have cultures from pretty much probably every globe represented here, right?
Yeah.
How do you, or have you had a situation where that negotiation is a little bit different? And can you talk about where you draw from for sensibilities to be at least, considerate, unbiased, balanced, in that jury? Yeah.
Well, recently I represented a young man, and his parents were born and raised in Nigeria, and moved here to the United States. And so um, his values were very much rooted in his culture, and his parents, of course, being Nigerian, their values were very much rooted in their culture. And when you deal with the different cultures, uh, you have to learn how to talk to people, and you have to understand, and like I have to understand that the mother and father of this young man, that nothing's going to happen in this case without their consent. They will have to approve everything, which is very much unlike those occasions where I represent a young man who's born, for instance, here in the United States. And there is a way to speak to these nice people, and these are very, very nice people who, commanded respect,
Wow.
by their bearing, and so in speaking to them, right? I have to speak to them in a respectful way, in a respectful tone, and a way befitting their status as parents of this young man. And so I couldn't negotiate or try to negotiate anything without negotiating with them first. And I think you have to try and understand and appreciate the culture. And I had the same issue with a young man who migrated from China some years ago. I could not resolve his case without the consent and direction of his father. So, so you have to, respect culture.
So even in sharing that example, and thank you for both of those wonderful examples, you touched on the method of advisory, right? And these young men look to their families for that. As business owners, can you speak to a method of advisory that might keep us safe or safer in matters of legal or accounting or bookkeeping, or your experience even as an entrepreneur?
Well, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said something, and I said to them, I said, you don't know how to talk to Black people, because if you talk to some Black folks the way you just got through talking, you might get punched in the face.
Okay. Okay.
You know, um, and um, and again, it is being aware and making sure that you're aware of who your customer base is, who your clients are. Perhaps they are Middle Eastern. I had a call with some Middle Eastern folks today, and even though the adult son is 50 years old, and he's not a defendant or anything, it was a business issue. Nothing's going to happen in that business unless the 80-year-old dad
Right.
says okay. And I think you always need to know who your customer base is, who your clients are. And I think, it's incumbent upon you to learn about their culture and know how to talk to them, how to speak to them in terms and in a manner with decorum, that they appreciate and expect.
Well, what about outside counsel, right? So as a business owner, and I memorized this, right? Oh, you got to have an attorney, you got to have an accountant, you got to have, your tax person. Like who's that lineup in your mind for an entrepreneur? Who's in that lineup?
Well, I have a CPA.
Hmm.
And let me tell you, when I first started practicing law as a sole practitioner, I was so caught up in practicing law that I didn't take care of, business in terms of the books, reporting requirements, um, setting aside money for taxes and things of that nature. And let me tell you, the first 4 years in business, it was a struggle because I found myself constantly being behind in terms of, my obligations as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner. And make no doubt about it, law is a business.
Yes, no, it is. And I'm acknowledging that. I recognize
Yeah.
that.
And so
Yeah.
I have a CPA. I have a lawyer who was an expert in ethics. I have a tax preparer
Hmm.
who I've been using for the past 14 years. So I have all of those people in place. And of course, when it comes to legal issues and business issues that are beyond Chris Darden, I even have a lawyer for that.
Okay.
Oh,
And so
okay.
that's who I want to meet. I want to know the lawyer's lawyer. No, I'm just joking.
Well, let me tell you something. I've been a lawyer 44 years, and I'll tell
Right.
you, I've been in family law court. I've dealt with business litigation, personal litigation, PI
Mhm.
litigation involving me or
Yes.
my family members, and I have never represented myself. Never, ever. Even on occasions when I felt that sitting there watching, having a lawyer represent me, and even though I felt that I was a better lawyer than that person was.
Okay.
What do they say? A person who represents himself or herself as a fool for a client. I don't represent myself. I think it is good to have, that barrier to create a barrier between you and the litigation. I think it's good to have someone to speak on your behalf. Because as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as human beings, we get caught up emotionally in these litigation issues and family law issues and whatever kind of legal issue. And the courtroom is no place for emotion.
Right.
It's
Right.
no place for emotion. And sometimes you need that person who can, with a stone cold face who can look at a situation objectively and say, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's going to happen. This is your exposure. This is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. And more importantly, this is what you should have done or should not have done in the first place that got you here.
Okay. No, now you're making me excited for your seat on the Superior Court. I want to understand better, and if you don't mind me asking,
Please.
how you sitting on that side of the courtroom, will you know and understand the objective of both of, the plaintiff and what's the other person called?
The defendant.
Defendant, yes. So when you're sitting on that side of the courtroom and you're like, okay, I understand what they want to achieve and I understand what they want to achieve, but then it takes them presenting it to you for you to be able to make that decision. What's that process like?
Well, what you hope as a judge when you have litigants in front of you is you hope that the lawyers are capable, and you hope that the lawyers have done everything by the numbers. You hope that the lawyers have given you, or the litigants if they're not represented by lawyers, but you hope that they've given you everything that you need to know so that you can make the right decision. I see people all the time complain about what happened in court, and a lot of times it's because someone failed to give the judge what the judge needed to perhaps make the decision that you, the litigant, thought was the right decision.
Mhm.
So as a judge, you rely, a great deal on the parties. When I first became a deputy district attorney during the interview, I was given a hypothetical where opposing counsel had discovery, had the reports, and et cetera, but failed to bring up at trial a critical point of fact that might have led to a hung jury.
Mm.
And the question to me was, what should you do? What is my obligation? And as I sat there and thought about it, I thought, well, my obligation is to my oath. And that obligation doesn't extend to practicing law for the other lawyer. My
Ah,
job.
okay.
And they thought that was the right answer.
Mhm.
And as a judge, it's not my job to practice law either. I have to expect and hope that the litigants will give me the information, the law, the arguments that will help me make the proper decision.
So this is enlightening for me. So your seat is a seat of neutrality, essentially. So you're really the base of the scale. You're not one scale or the other, right? There's
Right.
one side, maybe the plaintiff, one side the defendant, but you're actually that weighted base of the scale. So it
Correct.
doesn't tip to one side or another. That is okay. I understand now. I understand.
And it's it's a heavy responsibility.
Mhm.
Let me just say that um, because you want to make people whole who should be made whole,
Right.
and you don't want people to suffer unnecessarily.
Mhm.
But you also want to hold people responsible. People have to be held accountable. And when people aren't held accountable, then it undermines the law, and the law is undermined because of a lack of accountability. You have chaos.
I understand. So how will you, because it sounds like a lot of things that have to go and get processed in your brain and, the difference between you as the lawyer and you as the judge. How do you release all of that? I mean, you make me think of more of an empath, and you know how the empaths, they're taking in everything that's happening in front of them. What's your release? What's your let go of a lot of that stuff?
Well, I've been able to let go of a lot of things over the years. As a lawyer, I'm an advocate. And so when I was a prosecutor for 16 years, I was an advocate for the people.
Mhm.
And I've been doing criminal defense work for 25 plus years. And I'm an advocate for my client. But, in the middle of that, I went back to law school. I was able to teach law at Southwestern University School of Law for 5 years and 3 years as a full-time law professor. So I was able to get back into the Constitution and go back and relearn the things that I learned as a law student. And I can see both sides, I think. And at the same time, I feel that I can function um, on neither side.
Okay.
To be in the middle, I'm going to be Switzerland if I'm elected.
Yeah.
I'm going to be Switzerland. I'm going to be neutral, and I'm going to make decisions based on the law and the facts. And when the law allows me some room to make my own decision, some discretion,
Mhm.
make a decision, within the confines of the law. I hope that based on 44 years of experience, I can exercise that discretion uh,
Mhm.
in the appropriate way, in an empathetic way, in an honorable way, um, and uh, and in a way that litigants, can appreciate and
Do,
understand.
do you feel that you would bring something that the bench doesn't already have to the seat?
Well, there are great judges. We have
Yeah.
great judges in Los Angeles County. I am very proud of the Los Angeles County bench, but we're at a point where the law is in influx. The law is changing, especially the criminal law, and we're in a struggle. We're in a struggle. It is the old ways, the way that we've done things for the past 100 years, juxtaposed or versus reform,
Mhm.
and the notion that perhaps we need to do things a new and different way. And there are a lot of people, a lot of judges on the bench who I think only want to do it the old way. But we do need to take a look back at how we have processed cases, how we've charged individuals, how we've set bail, and how we've sentenced. And I think for the first time in a long time, we're also, because of where we are in the criminal law, we're also in a position to really consider the impact criminal sentencing has, not just on the individual defendant, but more on the victim and more so on the defendant's family. Because we have taken the gavel and we have banged that gavel in a way that sometimes, I think, destroyed families unnecessarily, or in a way that sometimes denied a person who should have been given a second chance. Um, and I've seen a lot. Don't get me wrong. I've seen a lot of crime. I myself have been out there kicking doors in, serving search warrants on gang murders. I've prosecuted multiple homicides, and as a prosecutor, and I've defended many, many people, accused of homicide, and et cetera. And I see people go to prison for a long time because they earned it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I
I do.
see people sometimes go to prison a long time, and then I sit there and watch, and I wish it was different. Um, but if we can have Darden in the middle, I'll try to make the right call. A call that I call it balanced justice. You
Mhm.
know, uh, People have to be held accountable.
Yes.
That's true. Victims have rights. The community needs to be protected. But all of these things need to come together and be carefully considered when we decide what justice is or is not as a community.
Mhm. And that's a very, I think, not to discount that vantage point, right? To know what it's like to live in those communities, to know what it's like to thrive and, go beyond the constraints of those communities. So that's huge. What do you think are the characteristics of, I'm going to put the word good in air quotes,
Sure.
but that of a balanced weight. I'm not even going to say good judge, bad judge, but of a balanced weight. I heard you say empathy, and that one really struck a chord with me. But what's a good description of what that person is like?
I think the person needs experience, not just experience in the law, but life experience. I'm different from other candidates. I didn't just, graduate law school, go into the district attorney's office and prosecute people, and now I want to be a judge.
Right.
I lived. I lived in the community. I went. I got my bean pie at Stalker
Mm.
Crenshaw. For years. I've lived, a Cadillac in La Cienega, the Lachlan Place. I lived for years in Carson. You know what I mean? And even after O.J. Simpson and some of the other cases that I've handled that some people may not, liked my handling it, I've always walked in the community. I just put on a baseball hat and a mask. And I've always been there standing right next to people. And I need that. I need that. I need that experience. I need to hear what people saying, what people were saying. When the Rodney King trial was going on, I was in the executive boardroom in the DA's office, and we were watching on television, and different high level prosecutors had these opinions about what was going to happen. You know what I said one day? I
What
said,
just
I said that right before the verdict, I said, you'll be lucky to get one of them. Lucky to get one of them. And you probably won't get that. People are like, what? Oh, get this guy out of here. He doesn't know what he's talking about. What happened?
Mhm.
What happened? And even in Simpson, I told people this is what's going to happen. This is going to be the outcome in all of this, no matter what happens. And I felt that there was a certain outcome to come, no matter what else happened, because I live there, and I eat there, and I shop there, and I socialize there, I date there. I'm in the restaurants, I'm in the coffee shops. I'm there every day, and I talk to people, and I know people, and I know what the heartbeat, or knew what the heartbeat of the community was back then.
Will you have to separate or even take away some things that are on your plate to adequately fulfill this role? Or is there room on your plate in addition to this?
There is room on my plate in addition to this, because I don't know everything, and I don't pretend to know everything. And
Okay.
every day I'm learning something. And every day I'm meeting someone new and learning something new about that person or that person's life. I'm one of those people who understands and appreciates that even if you see someone every day, you don't know uh, what cross they might be bearing. We don't know what folks are really going through, behind the smile, behind the facade. Um, I know that I don't know everything, and I know that I have to rely on and depend on the people in front of me to help me understand, to help me understand. When some kid comes in and has done something really stupid, and someone's saying, well, don't send him to prison for 10 years, judge. The law allows you to do that. And, and I don't know, should I or shouldn't I? Tell me, help me,
Right there, the two in front.
help me understand. And I want to be open to that. And, people have given me second chances. I've been a litigant in the courtroom. I know what it means to be falsely accused. I know what it means to be maligned. And I know what it means to deal with a system which oftentimes unfortunately, is biased, you know, against a particular person or a particular party.
Mhm.
So, bring it to me. I want to receive it. I want to know. I want to be educated. Uh, Maybe at the end, if I'm elected judge, it won't just be, the Honorable Christopher Darden. Maybe it'll be the learned
Um,
Christopher Darden.
yeah, I was going to add that to the list of the weighted base characteristics: the life learner, the empathetic, the experienced. So I heard you say all of that. So that's actually really wonderful. So for those that would like to support or to get involved in supporting your journey for the 130 seat 130, right? For the LA County Superior Court, how do they do that?
Well, number one, you can go to my website, Christopher Darden for Judge, FOR, Christopher Darden for Judge.com, and you can contact me there. You can donate there, and you can read about my campaign and myself. I was on a huge Zoom call the other day, and someone asked, "Well, Mr. Darden, how are you gonna get people out to the polls? What are you gonna do?" And, and of course I say, well, I have social media, I have signs, I have some volunteers, I have all of this and that. But, I want to go to churches, and I am starting this weekend.
Okay.
Like, I want to come over to your house, and if you make gumbo, I will really come to your house. But I want to come over and taste your sweet potato pie. And I want to talk with you, and I want to, spend some time with you, and spend some time with your neighbors, and spend a little while. Let's talk about some of the issues that are confronting us. Because if I'm elected to the bench, I'm not going to be a judge that just hides behind a robe. You're going to see me. I'm going to be in your church. I'm going to be at the Boys and Girls Club. I'm going to be at the open market. I'm going to be in Leimert Park. Uh, I'm going to be downtown LA. I've got friends down there doing things on Skid Row. I'm going to be down there on Skid Row because it's a privilege. It's an honor to be elected judge, to be selected as a judge to sit on the bench, and that's not something that I take lightly. It's not a job or responsibility I take lightly. It is a gift.
Is
And
is this the peak of the mountain?
well, the peak of the mountain is my kids.
Oh,
I
I
got
mean,
great
it
kids.
was a question. It's a
I
question.
got great kids. I have great kids, and I have a great wife, and I have a great family, and I lost a brother, Christmas Eve 2022, and sister the year before that, my father in 2017. So in my life, there are peaks and there are valleys, and you know, um, practicing law or being in the newspaper or something like that. That's all good. Been there, done that. What matters is family and community and God. Um,
No, I love it.
Things that really, really matter. And if you're in a good place, and I feel like I am on all three those issues, points in life, man, that is the mountaintop. Even if I didn't win the election,
Mhm.
I'm still sitting pretty.
You're doing all right. I
I'm
love
doing all right. I'm doing all right. I can't complain. Millions of people would like to be in my position, and properly so. Um, I hope to win because I think that I can make a difference, and I think God has set this path in front of me to follow,
it. Mhm.
and I'm going to do.
No, I hear you answering your calling. I heard you say yes loud and clear, resounding yes. But I also hear the passion in injustice, right? In being of service, good, bad, or indifferent, right?
Yeah.
That you're the conduit, right, for justice, for a lot of silenced voices, a lot of underserved, under-resourced, underemployed, underbelly of communities. But what I also hear is that you've risen to a place in your career where you're also role modeling what that looks like for others to go out and do similar, better, different work along those lines as well. And
Yeah.
that is a testament to purpose and mission, right? So that legacy of that path that you're creating for other attorneys, paralegals, and people in the judicial system that can make a difference on those fronts.
Yes, and there's no greater honor than to receive an email or phone call or have someone stop me on the street and say, Professor Darden, I was a student of yours, or Mr. Darden, I watched you on television. Mr. Darden, I read your book, In Contempt. Mr. Darden, you inspired me to go to college, to become a police officer,
Mhm.
be- to become a lawyer, to go to law school, to be a prosecutor.
Yeah.
And there are few honors professionally greater than that. And I'm so appreciative of that. I think I've done my job, quite frankly. I did it. I talked the talk and I walked the walk. And if this was the day it all ended, um, I would still be in a great place.
Planet Earth owes you nothing. I'm so happy that first of all, I had the opportunity, we've met before, but I've had the opportunity to understand you the man, you the judge, you the attorney, you the activist, you the advocate. This is a very, very enlightening, warming conversation because I mean, I haven't had a lot of experience in the courtroom, but I can imagine just the way that the hierarchy of the aesthetics of that room can be very intimidating,
It is.
daunting, the process, the questions have to quit. I don't even watch law TV shows,
Me either.
I need three. You got three questions, and then you've lost me. So to have an appreciation now for the foundational work that you've done in your career, and then to on top of that to understand one that you're not going anywhere, right? For you to invest in education for our future, that to me is huge, right?
Yeah.
It's not this higher, holier than thou position that you're taking and you're going to make change and you're going to do it your way, which is similar to what you said needs to change. But that fact that you're planting seeds and harvesting at the same time, you're a true farmer. I love it. I think it's a beautiful
Thank
thing.
you. It's very kind of you.
No, I think
Like I
it's
said before we began to talk, I said, we're going to have a conversation that I've never really had with anyone before. And I've never really had a conversation like this with anyone. And I'm grateful, to have it today and to have it with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So if there's one thing that you would share with all the entrepreneurs within the sound of your voice, one thing that they need to go and do today, what would that one thing be?
That would be to take care of your personal security and understand. And let me remind you that in California, you're not allowed to use violence to protect your property. See, I think back to Latasha Harlins in 1991, and people need to know that you can't use deadly force or violence or physical force to prevent necessarily a property crime. And I have this fear that at some point somebody's going to pick up a gun. Some store owner is going to pick up a gun and kill somebody, and then it is going to create a lot of problems, for everybody, because we watch people run into stores, we watch these mobs, we watched some 100 people down in Compton ram a car into a bakery and then go in and steal baked goods. And of course, they took the cash register and whatever they thought was valuable. But we've seen this all the time, and it has created fear, instilled fear in the public. And it has caused people to question law enforcement's ability to keep us safe. And it has challenged the reforms that have been made, the social justice reforms that have been made in the law. This conduct undermines those processes, those advancements, those positive changes are being undermined by people who participated in these kinds of mob groups, these mob thefts. And I just think that we all have to try to find a calm place, be secure, take care of ourselves and our personal security. And as painful as it might be and as destructive as it might be, if you were one of those store owners or shop owners who is attacked by a mob like that, or your business is attacked by a mob like that, please try to constrain yourself and don't pick up a gun in defense of your property, because to do so may subject you to several years in prison. And I don't want that for any of my fellow business owners or my fellow citizens.
No, good to know. Thank you for that. And thank you for being here today. We appreciate having you here on the road to recovery, where emerging and established entrepreneurs can get the base knowledge, the base information, base resources to help grow and sustain their businesses. So thank you again, Attorney Darden.
And thank you for having me.